The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we welcome you to this live show. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours. We're coming to you from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm so thrilled and excited to be here with you. You know I love Wednesdays. Now normally on Wednesdays we have asked Dr. Doreen, and we had told you the last week that we weren't going to have Dr. Doreen again today, but I have a very special guest for you today. Evelyn Kung, who's the clinical director of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, is here to answer your questions. So it's going to be Ask Evelyn Kung today. And you guys have had the benefit of having her answer your questions, and we all love her, so it's all good. And then in our second hour today, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is going to join me for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And we've got a bunch of special guests. We've got two women who've created a program to help kids who are becoming adults get jobs in the music industry. We know that employment is a huge, huge issue, and that sometimes our kids have interest in specific areas, and so they're just beating and swathing a path for kids to be able to have internships and then jobs, meaningful paid jobs in the music industry. So we're going to be talking with them, and we also are going to have the author of this book, Dr. Vaughn Lauer, is going to be with us talking about When the School Says No, how to get the yes. Oh, my friends, don't we need to know about that, right? This is a pivotal book talking about the IEP process and trying to figure out what are the 6 questions that you need to sit down and ask yourself and ask your IEP team to get everybody on the same team. It's a game changer, so we're going to be talking with him a little bit later on. And then, of course, Nancy and I have tons of in the news for you that we're going to be sharing. But we want to remind you at this point that the whole show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, your questions. There are lots of ways to participate, more ways than ever. We now are live on Twitter and Periscope, in addition to all the other ways that we have been live for a while. So the wonderful Samantha is going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us. I'm going to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, please take advantage of all the things that are on the page to do. But if you want to watch the live show, click on the little triangle that's on the computer screen. That will start either the live show playing or the most recently recorded live show. If you want to talk to us, you can do that on the live feature, which is just to the side of the computer screen. You put your cursor in the box that says your questions, you type and you hit enter. That's it. You don't have to log in. You don't have to have a username, a password. You do not have to prove to us that you're a bot by figuring out whether those are letters or numbers in the boxes. Isn't that wonderful? And it's totally free. No one wants your credit card number. Nobody's even asking for your address, which is one of the reasons why I tell you when you write in, it's really best if you give us an idea of what the biggest major city is and how close you are to it. We don't want your street address, but if we know where you are in the world, then our experts can have a better idea of telling you what resources might be available in your area. Okay? We appreciate when you write in on all the ways that you write in, but I do say that on our homepage, it's anonymous. So if you write in on Facebook, the world knows who's asking the question. And if you don't want that to happen, write in on autism-live.com. All right, we are so excited. Normally I would say to you, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen, but instead it's time for Ask Evelyn Kung. And we are welcoming with us right now, Evelyn Kung, who's been sitting so patiently while I rattled all of that off. Thank you for doing that.
You're very welcome.
And we should let people know that you are the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You've been working in this field for how many years?
20-something.
20-something, yeah. I think that qualifies you as an expert in anybody's playbook. But we like to give the disclaimer at the start of the show that there is no expert in any field that could give individual specific advice in this format. So keep that in mind. When you guys write in your questions, anybody that we have here answering questions is going to be taking the information that you give and giving some general tips and some suggestions for things to try, or to talk to an expert that has access to that individual, because you really need to spend some more time than we can do in this format.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. But having said that, thrilled that you're here this morning to answer questions, and thank you so much for filling in for Dr. Doreen.
You're very welcome.
Well, it's truly our big treat. I want to start with a question. Somebody wrote in over the week saying, huge problem with 14-year-old male ASD child has two major issues. One, will not sleep alone and wakes up almost daily after first cycle sleep of night, approximately 3 to 4 a.m. with loud verbal sounds. That is definitely a problem. He is considered nonverbal, attends day school for autism. If left alone after falling asleep, will get up and go into mother's bed, awakening her. Family is experiencing constant sleep disruption, which is impacting mother's work ability. She is the principal income earner with a high stress job. Numerous tactile interventions have been tried without success, and the doctor prescribed melatonin 10 milligrams. Problem is remaining asleep. Then the second problem, she goes on, 2, child has developed behavior of wetting himself soon after arriving at school, although being toileted before leaving home. Changes own clothes and returns to class, continues work, and does not repeat the behavior the whole day. School does not call any attention to this behavior. Behavior began 6 months ago at another more restrictive PS placement. Other parents experiencing this problem, they want to know. Okay, so should we tackle number 1 first?
Yes, let's
okay.
do number 1.
All right.
Okay, so first of all, this is a 14-year-old, and that one of the reasons why I actually talk to the younger ones, parents of younger children, and tell them let's work on getting them to sleep in their own bed from the beginning, is autism has routine. Kids like routine. And if you get the routine of sleeping with someone, they're going to want to keep it.
Yeah.
And breaking any habit that's been there for 14 years, it will take a while. There won't be any magic cure. And so I always recommend to the younger parents of younger kids, like, this is something you want to do early on because you don't want to make this a habit. Typical kids, family beds and all that are fine, because at some point those kids want independence.
Yes.
And so they naturally will migrate out of the parent's bed. But these are kids who develop habits, kids with ASD, and therefore whatever habit you're establishing when they're young, it's probably going to stay around if no one changes it.
The longer you keep doing it, the harder and the longer time it's going to take to change it, so something to be mindful of.
Yeah, and that's all of us. Any bad habit or any habit we get into, it's really hard for all of us to change any habit. And it's the same thing for your kids. It's just that they have the additional component of liking the routine and not wanting change or transition.
Okay, but if you haven't done that and you find yourself with a 14-year-old...
Okay, so for this child, the problem is that he has trouble remaining asleep.
Yeah.
So the first place I would look is that the doctor has prescribed melatonin. There's something called a melatonin wake, and it usually happens after 3 or 4 hours.
Ah.
And so what happens is when your body uses up all of melatonin, you are wide awake.
Wow.
And that's why a lot of people actually hate melatonin.
Okay.
Because it is something it's a documented thing that happens. And you are wide awake. It's the thing that helps you sleep and helps your body go to sleep. So the minute there's no more in your system, you are more awake than anything. It's like if it's morning.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel tired. It's
Right.
just that you're wide awake for the day. And when that's happening at 3 or 4 a.m., it's a horrible time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And so there are other supplements out there that combine melatonin with other types of supplements that help keep the kids asleep, and the slow release and all of that. And that actually has changed for a lot of the kids.
I know that Dr. Grampiche has one that she particularly loves, and she talks about it extensively
Okay.
on the show, Tranquil Sleep.
Yes.
She has brought it up before. We're not recommending any products at all, and we need to be clear about that. But it is one that she has mentioned before on the show that, it is very reputable, and again, not a recommendation at all.
Well, we know about it because other parents have told us about it.
Yes.
That's how we know. And just with everybody and their sleep deprivation issues, we've had
It's
so many
tough.
people try. It's really hard to function. You can't think when you are sleep deprived.
Well, and so the kiddo is going to have more trouble, but then for everyone in the household.
Yes.
And I'm of course I'm really feeling for this mom who has got to keep a roof over the head, and getting woke. 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake me up, and I'm not going to be a nice person for that day and the next day.
And
I'm just
the thing
gonna
is,
say.
there's a long-term effect for the child and for the mom.
Yeah.
And I know this because I've talked to a lot of neurologists with, a kid is not ready to learn if he's getting up at 3 or 4.
No.
If you are bringing him to school, he's not feeling good. I mean, one of the things that we always talk about is the kids need to sleep well and eat well, then they're ready to learn.
Yeah.
Then you can put them in school or any kind of learning situation, ABA, they will fully get everything they need from it. But as long as they're sleep deprived, it will be hard to concentrate, just like you and me.
Yeah.
And the long-term difficulty for the mom especially is because I have a parent right now who works at night, and so she tries to take care of the kids in the day,
Oh
and
my
then she
gosh.
works at night, so a lot of times she's only sleeping between 9 and midnight, because then she goes in at 1 a.m. And the neurologist actually pulled her aside and said, your memory will go.
Yeah.
You will start to lose your memory very quickly if you stay sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And so she's seen it and herself experiencing. And so we always work to try to figure out a way to help her get a night's sleep.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. So for this child, definitely look at the melatonin, but also, if he's not getting sleep, he's not ready to go in. If he is waking up at the same time, he's a teenager too, so that means he's going through puberty. We always actually recommend 24-hour EKG
Okay.
for a lot of these kids, because there is some kind of correlation, I've been told by neurologists, between like spurts of hormone and seizure activity
Okay.
among individuals. And I've seen it in my kids, especially at preteen. Like they'll come in and be perfectly fine, and then suddenly as they hit the preteen years and they're starting to go through puberty, there seem to be like a whole subset that do get seizures.
Okay.
And then I finally had a neurologist tell me that I was right.
Yeah.
that it is something that happens.
And from what I've heard with seizures, it can be possible that it's happening with your child and it's not visible to you because it's happening at such a level in the brain. It's a teeny tiny seizure, but it can disrupt things, and you're only going to be able to see it if you take them and do that EKG.
Yeah, and you want the 24-hour one, because the one that's only that's short one, it has to happen during that time. And since this is during sleep,
Yeah.
that is an issue.
Okay.
So that is something else to look at.
So something to check, to rule out, may not be, but if it is that, then it's going to open up a whole new door of how you treat this.
Definitely.
Okay.
So those are just general recommendations for now. And the other thing that's helped a lot of our kids is we've actually looked at what they're eating and seeing if there's a correlation. Like I had a child who basically, when he drinks any or eats any dairy, within 6 hours of bedtime, he would wake up at exact 2 or 3 in the
Isn't that
morning.
interesting?
And we removed the dairy from 6 p.m. Before he could have dairy, but before 6 p.m. And then he slept through the night.
Okay.
These are strange things. So there are some food correlations. So if you want to do a food diary with what time he's waking up and what he's eating, some of our parents have been really successful in finding some correlations in different types of foods.
But definitely not a thing to just let it ride. Something
No.
has to change.
No, and the thing is, if you're going to train him to sleep alone, it's going to be a slow process. This is where you need a behavior analyst to come in and just slowly shape, moving from the parent's bed to the child's own bed.
Yeah.
And it is something to work on, where you start one and then you slowly, move him over, or trying to reinforce keeping him there. But I have to warn you that you are sleep deprived now, and if you're going to work on sleep, it means that you are going to be more sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Because you have to be awake enough to follow through with whatever intervention.
To me means you've got to have reinforcements. There's no way you're going to do this on your own.
Oh no, definitely. And I actually tell parents it's not a way to spend vacation, but it's actually a good way for the long run to spend vacation, is is know that this is a time where you're going to work on this and know that you're going to be more sleep deprived, and then bring in reinforcements, people that will help you stay up, who will follow through, and who will really like stay with the routine, so that you're showing this child, this is where you're supposed to sleep, this is how it works. So there is a way to do it, but I recommend that you get some help.
And imagine, you might be feeling like, oh no, well, we started the conversation with saying, try to do this earlier than 14.
Yes.
But now the child's, this is a teenager that's 14. You want to do this now as opposed to when they're 18 or 20.
Oh, most definitely.
Now is the moment to get this, when would now be a good time? Now.
Now. Or
Yeah.
wait till the next school break. Or I do a lot of like major interventions during school and winter break.
Yeah, well, it makes sense.
Because then you're not disrupting school.
Yes.
So that makes a difference.
All right. And then for the second part of this, the wetting himself right after he gets to school.
Okay, so what I keyed in on this one is that the behavior began 6 months ago at a more restrictive public school placement. And my guess would be if it was more restrictive, there was probably some escape mechanism to this, or avoidance of wanting to go into that classroom. And then at some point it turned into a routine.
Yeah.
Like, this is just what I'm supposed to do when I go in. So really getting someone outside to do a functional assessment would be good. But in the meanwhile, like you're saying that he is fine when he leaves home, but the minute he goes to school soon after arriving, I would actually probably take him straight to the bathroom when you arrive, and have him go then, to make sure that you're limiting the possibility. Right. But I also would restrict liquids.
Yeah.
Because I would see, like, a lot of parents actually have a really good idea. They know that if they drink 1 cup of water, the child has to go in an hour.
Right.
So if you have that kind of idea, if you don't have that kind of idea, try to figure out some correlation.
Yeah, watch it over the weekend to see.
Yeah, and then just be able to see, like, okay, he drank this much at breakfast, and then you try to have it earlier so that he has less of a reason to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I got to be honest that if every day, I used to be a school teacher, and it's hectic in the morning. And there was one year when I had my first period was like my free period, because every teacher gets a prep period. Oh my gosh. Like, it spoiled me for every other year teaching, because to come in and have that whole hectic thing and then get a break was fabulous for me. And then every time that I had any other schedule, I kind of hated it and resented it. I was like, I really miss that break first thing in the morning. And so, there's a part of me that you were saying escape, he's taking care of it completely for himself. What a lovely little quiet break that you get to go to the bathroom, completely change your clothes, and then come in after all the hubbub has died down.
No, we have a lot of kids who that's what they do.
Yeah.
Even the older kids, even the kids that have a ton of skills and could easily ask to go to the bathroom, a lot of them in between classes will ask to go to use the bathroom at the beginning and the end of classes, because they just need that 5-minute break of just being calm and in full control and gathering their thoughts, and it's just comforting.
So they should have somebody at the school do an FBA to make sure and see what's really driving the behavior. But if, for instance, if it's mostly escape, as you were saying, taking them to the bathroom immediately, but then there has to be some bigger reward, like a break or something, for not having soiled themselves.
Yeah, and the thing is, it could just be that you take them there and they come out and get a downtime.
Yeah.
And just doing something fun away from all the hubbub of the morning activity. And it could just be, a lot of times we'll have them go to like the nurse's office.
Yeah.
And then they can just sit in the nurse's office for 5 or 10 minutes, just to where it's really calm.
Yes.
And that's the reinforcer.
Yes.
But yeah, you could also provide, and I'm a strong believer in school-based reinforcement. Mm-hmm. So whatever environment you're in, I want them to find something enjoyable in that environment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have to create what that is. So maybe it's just like a book or a video or an iPad where he only has access to it at that time and nowhere else. Not other times of the school day, not at home, nowhere else. But just knowing, like, hey, I get this reward, whatever it may be here.
And I can hear parents who are like, but then he's going to take 10 minutes off at the beginning of every single, day, and we're going to lose all that instruction. And I just want to remind people that when you do an intervention like that, you can gradually wean them, little itty bitty bit at a time. So maybe if it starts out being a 10-minute break, then it becomes a 9.5-minute break. break, then it becomes a 9-minute break, then it becomes an 8.5-minute break. And after, say, a month and a half, they don't need the break anymore. They just go to the bathroom. And yeah, you go, okay, I missed 10 minutes of class for a month and a half, but he's already missing 20 minutes with a behavior and soiling himself.
Well, and the thing is, in reality, if going to any classroom, the first 10 to 15 minutes of beginning and end of classes are really nothing. No, there's no instruction.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times it's a warm-up or
it's just
dealing with
transition
behavior.
period.
And yeah,
it's just
no,
a
it's
transition
true.
period. So a lot of times they just miss that transition.
Yeah.
Where there's not instruction going on.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Let us know. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with more of your questions. Stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be creating a popsicle puzzle. As we do this fun activity, you'll notice these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about the skills we're using to create the craft and where you can find them on the Skills program. Skills is an ABA-based tool that helps parents create a curriculum that will help their children that are on the autism spectrum. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are popsicle sticks, tape, and arts and crafts materials. So step one, you're going to take your popsicle sticks and lay them down and cover them with tape so they don't move around. Now that my popsicle sticks have been secured with tape, here comes the fun part. You're going to take your arts and crafts materials, they can be paint, markers, whatever you have, and then you're going to decorate this with a beautiful picture. This is the beautiful picture that I made. Now what I'm going to do is remove the tape. And now, as you can see, they come apart. And here is your awesome puzzle. Now, the fun part is trying to assemble the picture that you just made now that it's all been separated. I hope you enjoyed this activity with me. Until next time, guys, craft on! To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Evelyn Kung. She's here today filling in for the wonderful Dr. Grampuchet. She's filling in for Dr. Grampuchet, but it's kind of you're filling in for Ask Dr. Grampuchet, kind of. And so it's wonderful that she's here and she's answering your questions. As we said earlier in the show, she's the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and been working in this field for 20 some odd years. So plenty of expertise there. I want to go to this question. My 11-year-old is on the spectrum and he has two sisters, ages 8 and 9. I feel like the only way he knows how to interact with them is to be annoying, running in their rooms and bothering them, then starts the endless he said, she said tattling. It's driving me crazy. How do I teach him to interact nicely with them? He attends a regular ed middle school and does well academically, but is very immature, and thank you.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that goes, this is that age range. And, you know, when you see like silly movies like Something About Mary and things like that, and the word that they always use with movies like that is they say it's sophomoric humor. Yes. Because it's sophomores, you know, and younger. It's that, you know, there is a part of me that loves boys in this age range, but they're in the age range where you say certain words and they dissolve into giggles and everything is off color and they laugh at the most ridiculous, silly things. So part of me wants to congratulate this mom because it seems kind of neurotypical boy to me, but I don't know if my view of it is skewed. So what do you think?
Okay. So congratulations to the mom for identifying this, because it is probably the way he gets the most attention from the girls.
Okay.
8 and 9-year-old girls are the beginning of being like cliquey, where I always tell my patients that have sons,
yes,
it's good that they're not a girl, because with girls talk more, and a lot of their activity is based on who's friends with who. And trying to explain that to an ASD girl is always so hard, saying like today she's your friend because she decided to, and tomorrow she may not be, and it's okay. And just explaining that type of interaction that happens between friends and girls at 9 years old is very common. And so for this child, it probably is a mixture of what you've said. Part of it is just that silly behavior, and if he has that understanding and just be, just kind of silly and just goofing off. But a part of it is he probably wants to interact with his siblings, especially if they're sharing a room, and the two of them are in one room and he's in another, and he probably doesn't know how to get in there. And a lot of what they're talking about is probably something that he doesn't understand, even if they let him in. So but he knows that if he goes and bothers them in whatever way, they will probably respond in the same way. Get mad at him, tell him to leave, yell for mom, whatever it may be.
But that's attention.
And that's attention, and that's probably somewhat routine attention. So it becomes comforting for him. It's negative attention, but there's some aspect of the routine where the kids are like, I know what to expect.
Yeah.
If I go in and do this to them, they for sure will start to yell or tell me to leave or whatever it is. And that's just the way it is. So a lot of times in these situations, I actually sit the girls down and I talk to them and I just say, hey, I know when your brother comes in, this is, it bothers you and everything, but we need to figure out a way for him to spend time with you where you're not yelling at him or you're not doing those things. And a lot of times the siblings are really good and they will have that kind of time. It's just that it's not during that time, period. But there are also siblings who really grow to hate their sibling with ASD. And I feel so bad for that. And I actually spend a lot of time with siblings trying to get them to understand, it's nothing about you, it's how he understands the world.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't know what to say to you, or maybe he knows that he can go ask you a question, but your response is something he doesn't understand because of the language part and communication part, he's not going to want to ask you because he can't predict or he can't understand what you're saying. The comprehension is very minimal. So that becomes an issue too. So I actually will sit the girls down and talk about what really bothers them, how much this child actually understands. Even though he's older than them, he will understand less than them. And just try to create situations that they can actually interact positively together. And I talk to the girls and I get their opinions about when they would like that to happen. For some girls, if they get some choice in it, or siblings, if they get some choice in how they're working through it, they will totally work through it. They will do it. If not just for the parents.
Yeah.
So I would actually sit there and say, okay, when can we do this? But then it might remain a problem at night. Maybe the girls are doing homework or something and they can't. Then I would actually establish some short activity, whether they're having a snack together or something to where they're getting some positive interaction. Because they need, a lot of times we'll be teaching a game to the 11-year-old and I actually ask the parents, what do kids in your family like to do? Or I ask the parents, what did you do before you had kids?
Yeah.
Because I want to teach this child something that's going to integrate into the family.
Yeah.
Not always having the family integrate into the child's interest.
Love it.
And so it works with everything. I have families who say, I'm so tired of Disney tunes.
Right.
And I say, okay, so then what kind of music did you listen to, or do you listen to outside? Or before you had kids, and then they say, and I said, so start playing that, because the kids like the music because of the routine of it.
Yeah.
Not because, they will have preferences in terms of types of music, but if they start to hear it just as much as they hear that Disney, it'll grow on them, and that becomes more of a habit and ritual and routine, and then they start acclimating. And it gets really crazy because music actually is one of the ones that really integrates the kids into the family. I have kids at all level of functioning where we can get the kids into the siblings' music, get them into the parents' music, where they like to listen, or they dance around, or they've even gone to concerts. So it's really, music is one of those things that really works in terms of interaction, because it's something that's already natural for the siblings and for the family.
Yeah, love that.
So it's just trying to figure out what other activities that the family is engaging in that we can teach the child how to be a part of. And it's counterintuitive, because I know so many of our families just want to make our kids happy, the ASD kids, so they want to do what that kid wants. But I always say they're going to grow up anyway, and we need to get them into your family. And as long as they start integrating activities into the family's choice and what they do, they're going to remain a part of a more integrated family. So, I mean, so this is negative attention and they're getting a lot from it, but you just have to find another activity that they can do where he's getting positive attention, and then trying to figure out when this occurs mostly, and then teaching the siblings how to understand and how to talk at a level that he understands. So let's say he asks a question, they're not gonna they just kind of bring their language down so that he really understands, and making sure that he's understanding what they're saying.
And I kind of want to go back in a way. This relates back to me with the mom from the first question about being so tired, is if you're already at the point where this behavior is driving you crazy, that before you institute these things, either mom has to have a little bit of a break or she's got to have reinforcements. Because if you go to institute, okay, we're going to do an activity together, and you're sick and tired of them, you're not going to be your best self to do it.
No, definitely.
So, we really have to be careful as parents to pick and choose when we're ready to do something and ask for help, so that it's going to take a little bit of time and effort on your part. It's going to be so worth it. It's going to be so worth it. But you have to be ready to put that time and effort in before you even start.
Well, I think that's general for anything you're teaching.
Yeah.
Anything you're teaching, I always tell the families, if you're too tired to ask your child to clean up, don't ask them. Just do it yourself, because it's a lot easier for you to just clean up than to make the request and not follow through, or to follow through and know it's going to take 2 hours to follow through. And and as parents, you don't have that kind of energy to spare. So plan it. Know when you're going to give instructions that you really will follow through. And if you can't follow through, don't give the instruction.
It's that old thing about don't start something you're not prepared to finish, right? Is today a yes day of yes, I can follow through on that. And if I can't, then don't even bring it up.
Yeah, and actually for kids that are really high functioning, that are academically on par, but it's other social issues, I actually manipulate situations to me. So I actually start telling them okay, I'm tired today. What does that mean? What does that mean I'm going to do?
Right.
Start to learn mom.
Right.
And I start pointing it out and actually describing what will probably happen, depending on my mood.
Right.
And the kids get it. They're like, oh yeah, this is not a date.
Okay. What a great thing to think about is that we can communicate those things to our kids.
You just have to simplify it and make it in very concrete terms that they understand. And they start to read mom and dad pretty well.
Yeah, which is a great thing. Adds to quality of life. We had a question that just came in, and it is from what we fondly refer to as our West Virginia mom. So I have a little bit of background on this mom. But she says, I have a question about my son. Excuse me, he will, and everything just went away in that moment. And I totally lost the question. So we're going to take a break, figure out what happened with my iPad. Don't go away, West Virginia mom, and we'll get it back. Stick with us.
Logan Shepard. At first glance, he looks like a typical American teenager. He plays in a band, loves hanging out with his friends, he doesn't like doing homework, and he's not really fond of broccoli. But Logan Shepard is not your typical 14-year-old. Logan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He was nonverbal, made no eye contact, and his parents were told to abandon all hope. Instead, his parents began an intensive intervention treatment. At its center was a quality ABA program known as the CARD method. This is Logan Shepard now.
All I really want to say is I'm kind of copying Martin Luther King. I kind of have a dream that one day I can just inspire people and never give up, because that's what I want to do in life, because if I can succeed, they can succeed, and I will succeed.
To follow Logan's musical journey, visit www.facebook.com/officialdrummerrock or @drummerrock on Instagram. For more information on the CARD method, visit www.centerforautism.com or call 800-345-CARD. Rock on, Logan.
Well, we just had a technical glitch, and my iPad is rebooting. But while it reboots, we wanted to come back and do another question. And this kind of goes in hand with what I was saying before. I have a 4-year-old. How can I tell the difference between a 4-year-old just being a 4-year-old who is upset and not getting his way, and what can be contributed to his autism? He was diagnosed moderate.
Yes. So this is my answer to everybody is you need to know what a typical 4-year-old does.
Okay.
Okay. So the difference though is the communication ability. So with a typical 4-year-old, they can be having their own non-compliant tantrum kind of issues, but they understand the reasoning behind things and they understand the cause and effect component. So even if they are crying or tantruming and you tell them you're not going to do something or you will do something and these are the consequences, they get it and they're making that choice to do it. A lot of times when kids with ASD are diagnosed and they have these tantrums and compliance, you don't have that language ability to see what the reasoning is. And a lot of times the more you try to reason with the child, the more they get upset, because now there's all this additional language that they don't understand.
Okay.
And it becomes a bigger issue. So in terms of rate, all the funding agencies want to know, is he tantruming 2 times a day or non-compliant 5 times a day? We have a really specific criteria for what that non-compliant or tantrum is. A lot of times our kids will tantrum at a more intense level than a typical child or it might be the same intensity for every interaction as opposed to for a typical child. If they're not getting their way or if you're changing your mind about something, it's the exact same thing as if they're getting hurt. And that intensity shouldn't be the same, but it goes into the executive function aspect of understanding what's important and what's not important.
Well, this really, now that the iPad is working again, I'm gonna flip to the other question because it goes along with this. Our West Virginia mom said, I have a question about my son. He will be 4 in December, verbal, but speech is difficult to understand. How do I teach him self-regulation skills, and which ones do I teach? A simple tantrum turns into a massive meltdown that lasts well over an hour and sometimes more. He continually shuts down and you can't touch him, speak to him, etc., without escalating the situation. It is becoming a big problem and makes it difficult to leave the house. The tantrum usually starts out as he was disciplined or told no, and has a typical 3-year-old fit, yay for milestones, and then he can't calm down. Any help is greatly appreciated. So it does feed right into this, because you were talking about, well, we have to understand what's typical and what isn't typical. And this is about to be 3 and this one is 4. So since you're talking about this anyway, I just thought I'd piggyback that on. So
sometimes with the kids who actually talk but they're not clear, it's actually worse for them, because frustration is so difficult for them, because they're saying everything and they're communicating, at least to them it's clear, but to the person listening to them it's not clear.
Yeah.
And if they're asked to repeat or say it again, it's even just think about when you're aggravated, how often would you be able to comply if every time that you spoke, somebody would ask you to say it again or repeat yourself? It just becomes a really frustrating element of life.
I compare it to our teenagers with the headphones. Last night in the car, I said something to Jem, and I said, are you listening? Because I always say that now, because the headphones is like, yep, I'm listening. And I said, okay, so do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And he was like, wait, what? And then I repeated it again. And then he said something that had nothing to do with what I was talking about. And he goes, well, I don't really understand. Tell me again. And I was so frustrated, because it was like, how many times do I need, take the headphones off and actually listen to what I'm saying? So, but for a kid who's trying to communicate and they feel like they put in the energy, that was the same thing with me. I put in the energy, now respond. And when you don't get the response, it's just so exhausting.
And if your whole life is that way, it's constant, it's so frustrating overall.
Yes.
I mean, it completely is extremely frustrating. So I think that in itself is one thing, So if there's a way to work on clarity, I mean, I'm sure you're already working on articulation and all of that to make things more clear. But this is a situation, depending on where you're at, where I would use some kind of visual icon. So it's not like you're gonna go nonverbal because he's not talking. But when he's really upset, there's usually a few things that he wants where I would actually create some kind of icon. It's like, I need a break, I want out of here, or whatever, that I would create some kind of board for him to use. Like, if you're too tired to talk right now, just tell me what you need.
Okay.
And he can just point to it, and then you don't get to that point where he's losing it.
Okay.
You know, because especially as like that day goes on and they get more tired, it becomes they just don't have the patience for it anymore. And at the beginning, it might be okay. But also with autism, there is that self-regulation feature. It's an executive functioning issue. I always tell families that whenever they come in and say, we need some emotional control, and these are the kids who like cry at a drop of a hat, laugh at it. I mean, they're the most loving kids. That's the thing is, usually the kids that have emotional regulation issues are also the most loving kids. Because when they feel with all of themselves.
Yeah.
So they come in and they're like, oh, I love you and you're the best thing in the world. But then when they're crying at that level too.
Yeah.
And I always tell families, give me a few years to work on this because I can't do it, and it's not like a regular behavior.
Right.
So what I do is I work on a lot of antecedent manipulations where I don't get them to that point where they're really upset.
Yeah.
I try to do things ahead of time to count. And sometimes it's functional communication, like what I was saying. Like, here's the board. If you can't talk right now, just point and tell me what you want, and I'm not going to question you about it. I'm going to just give you whatever it is you're asking for. Sometimes it's teaching routines, so that, you know, if you say no, you won't answer again until like a certain timer goes off or a visual timer happens, you know, so that he just knows that this is, you know, she said no, and if I keep going, I'm still not going to get it. But if I wait this amount of time, I will get another response. Like, there's just other things that you can do ahead of time so that they don't get to that point of being completely exasperated and then crying for a long duration. But there's a lot of like behavior interventions that are antecedents. So changing things before they happen so that you don't get to the point where they're so upset. Of course, it's still going to happen, like a typical 3-year-old. You know, sometimes they just want to cry. And it's okay. And just knowing that, okay, if you cry, I'm still not going to give you your way. But hey, you can come in here, do it this way. And I'm just not going to pay attention to you during this time, but although I will come and check on you.
Yeah.
You know, to make sure you're safe and everything. But it's a lot of times with the kids, you want to do things before they get to the point. And that's where you need the behavior analyst to go in and try to figure out what those antecedents are.
Yeah.
What can you do? What alternatives can you provide without giving in to the meltdown? But so many times these kids, they just, you know, if they're vocal, I actually start telling them, like, I teach them when they're not in the middle of their meltdown, I actually teach them phrases that will help communicate what the meltdown is.
Yeah.
And it's important to do it not during a situation.
Yes.
There are some behavior analysts actually who will go in and say, like, he should be saying, like, I need a break, you know, in the middle of a crying thing, and try to get that from him. But I can't make a child say anything.
Right.
So I always want, and the thing is, if you just look at me and you, if we're really upset, we're not learning anything.
Right.
So I always say, like, hey, outside of the emotional moment, we're going to talk about this, or outside of the emotional moment, I'm going to teach you these phrases that I need you to know how to say.
Yeah.
So that when you start crying, I can prompt you and say, like, you can say this if you know, need whatever it is that you need. And a lot of times the kids will be like, oh, and then they'll just say it, and then you already have an established consequence for when they say it. So that just understanding that this is what will come is also, I think, very comforting to the kids, very rewarding, because they don't want to cry either, because it's exhausting to cry for, you know, an hour or however long to have that tantrum. So, you know, it's a lot of teaching ahead of time. You're not going to avoid them, because a normal 3-year-old will have those kind of 3-year-old tantrums, but you will try to avoid it or teach them other skills that will help you alter their behavior so that they're not getting to that point very often.
And then for meltdowns, you know, one of the amazing things that I've learned on this journey is that sometimes with the meltdowns, there's other stuff going on too. That if, like, and that one of the things that you guys made me do was take data on what was happening, and I couldn't see any point to it. The one example that I always talk about on the show is that there was a particular grocery store that we would go into all the time, and Jem liked to look at the octopus. There was always an octopus in their case, and it was like, go into the store and He was always so happy. Let's go look at the octopus. And then, everything was fine. And we would round the corner and go by the dairy, and he would have the mother of all meltdowns. The mother of all meltdowns. And you guys asked me 1,000,008 questions, and I, took as much data, but I was like, there is no pattern. There is no pattern except for the thing that we turn, and you guys were adamant. They're like, something's going on in that moment. And it took a therapist coming with me, because what it was the floor changed. It went from a slick floor to a grid floor. And he was having problems on other grid floors as well that I hadn't picked up on, that every time we would leave Disneyland, he would have a meltdown. And I didn't know that, because in Disneyland, when you go through the parking garage and when you walk on the side of the parking garage, it's a grid, and he would have a meltdown as we got off the escalator, because he always visually thought that he was going to fall between the grid.
So that's a visual, yeah, that's definitely. I had kids, and this is where you have a typical kid who can tell you this information.
Yeah, but he couldn't
tell you
No.
this was going to happen. I had my friend's child, we went for a walk, and we were at the University of Michigan, and he was 4, and they would say that he would have these sudden meltdowns, and what we realized is all the shadows.
Yeah.
He thought they were holes, and that's actually a developmental vision issue.
Yeah.
And so but he couldn't say it, and then I actually taught him while I was with him, because I just said, it's okay, see, touch with your foot. Like I taught him like a blind person to like touch and be like, you're not gonna fall, it's just a shadow. And it was really funny, because then on the whole trip as we were walking through, he would do that and he'd look at me and say, shadow? And I was like, yep, it's a shadow. And we would just go through.
Yeah, and you guys did that for Jem, and the tantrums went away. But when it's a meltdown, sometimes there's something else going on too. And I really think that, it's important to take data so that you can see patterns, but when you can get another pair of eyes to be looking at it too, because sometimes you can't see what's happening. You just don't.
I mean, this is where our kids, their communication ability really lacks, because a typical child will tell you what they're afraid of, or will describe to you what they're starting to feel, because a lot of times they're sick too.
Yeah.
You're like, they're crying more than normal, and then the next night you're like, oh, look, they have a fever now. This must have been happening yesterday.
Yes.
So like, I'm a firm believer of like, let's teach your child physical states, the basics.
Yes.
And even if they don't have a lot of language, or a lot of times they have language, but they can't use it when they're feeling bad. I mean, I have a child who doesn't use any language and will just point. I will just say, what hurts? And he knows now. He'll point to the area of his body and he'll say, ow.
Yeah.
Ow, because we taught him how to do that when we knew that he was sick.
Yes.
So like when we knew he had a sore throat, we would just have him point and say ow, and I would do 1,000 trials when he was sick, because you had to capture it when it's happening.
Yes.
You can't use it any other time.
Right.
If it's not occurring physically. So whenever they're cold, hot, I would just I immediately would just give 1,000 trials so that they could actually tell me. But the thing is, the parents always said, that was such a comfort, because now when anything hurts, he just points and he says ow to whatever body part it is, and they know.
And you can prevent the meltdowns and then get to giving them help and support for the thing that they want, which is, there's a dignity in that they're owed. They need to be able to have that. Okay, so let us know how that goes. Try those things out. I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back with one more short segment for talking with Ask Evelyn Kung. Stick with us. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Kung, who is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's answering your questions. We're calling it Ask Evelyn Kung. She's here filling in for Dr. Granpeesheh, who will be back next week. So those of you keeping track, you can see her next week. I've been dying to ask you this question that somebody wrote in. For college, is it better to disclose during the application process?
Okay. So this is where every university is different from my experience. I'm learning things all the time, but there are some schools where you have to apply the normal way, and then there is the disabilities office or learning resources offices, whatever they call it, and there you have to let them know if you want special consideration or needs. There are some where you apply and then you get redirected. And then there are some where you're doing it at the same time.
Okay.
So
how would you find out?
You actually can find out if you go. Like I always say ahead of time, go and just talk to the offices.
Okay.
And they're really honest with you. Most of the ones that I've spoken to, they're very honest. And you don't do it the year you're applying. Do it like a few years before.
Okay.
You want to do it early. Because there are schools that are known for being really welcoming to the situation.
Yes.
And I've learned about a bunch of programs recently. I have a kid that's on that age range, and while I'm there with her, I'm actually asking 1,000 other questions for our kids here.
Yeah.
And so there are some offices that are just really clear, like they want to help you. They don't discriminate at all. They are very open to helping. Like they want to help the child that has that disability really be successful. There are harder ones where they don't want to know anything about it,
Right.
and those are the ones I probably wouldn't disclose. Because unless there's a whole university system where I had a friend who was an admissions director, and she basically said, in your application, you have to show that you've overcome something. That if you've overcome, it can be anything, it shows that you have some kind of perseverance to stay involved.
Because college takes tenacity, it really does.
It does, and especially if you go to a larger public university, you're a number.
Yes.
No matter what. So there's a lot of universities who you might want to disclose a part of it,
right,
to show that you've overcome a lot and your child's been able to do so much even though they don't understand. And they might have an idea that your child might have a disability, but you're not coming straight out and telling them.
Okay.
And then there are the more competitive the university, that's probably the way to go. They usually will tell you no, you have to do the application process first, and then after that we'll handle things.
Yes.
But there are a lot of universities who will just tell you from the beginning, go to both places, tell us who your child is, we'll help you through it, and we'll help you through the process.
Okay.
But it varies depending on the university and where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. And in many ways, it is like the public school process. Is you want to show your child at their best, and not talk about the weaknesses so much because they don't want the responsibility.
Right.
So
it's even a different ballgame in college in terms of that they don't have a legal responsibility to change things for your child.
And you can tell if there is student support services, what do they have available already?
Right.
Because if they don't really have a formal office, they don't know what to do with you.
Right.
They won't know what to do. And that'll be harder. But if they have actually a student support office where they're looking at, if you have a disability or anything like that, then they're more likely to be more accepting of disclosing early on.
But there are more and more colleges that have autism programs.
There are.
That have living situations. So, I've been talking about this more and more. We've started something here on the show called Autism in the Classroom, and we've got a big event that's going to be happening at the beginning of the year. Because we just see that this is an area that we need to have more light shed on it and more information spread to people who want it. As part of that, we've been trying to make sure that we have information for people of all age range and all abilities. And it's been very exciting for me to see how much of a college experience is available, and not just for people who are wildly high functioning. So I'm happy that we're going to be sharing more information about that and seeing. I can remember when we started Autism Live looking for college situations and seeing just a teeny tiny handful, and now it's like, well, which are the best 10?
Well, it's really
Which are the best 10?
No, Peterson's guide has one just for if you have disabilities. That's how widespread it is now. I was in Barnes & Noble and I saw one last year. And I like opened it because I was like, okay, what college is that?
Yeah.
And it's a big book.
It's pretty amazing. So we'll look forward to sharing more information about that. But the possibilities are there, and that's a very exciting thing to know, really and truly, for all abilities.
No, and I was in Chicago last week, and I was talking to a parent about a situation where it's like a community college situation, but you can go and live and dorm, and they work on independent living skills.
Yes.
And really like doing community skills, but it's a college setting.
Yes.
But it keeps them safe.
Yes.
But they're not doing the academics, but they're just doing like all the independent learning and living, and they're on the campus.
Yeah.
And there's a whole situation where it's really guided toward that aspect.
Are we talking about Minnesota Life College?
No.
Oh, so there's another one. Okay, well, we have to find out about that later. But I want to try to squeeze in one more question. We have 3 minutes left. At what point can we pull ABA off a young adult with high functioning autism?
Okay, so ABA was never designed to be lifelong.
Yeah.
But there are kids where parents will swear up and down this is the way they learn. And if it's the most effective way they learn, we're doing, the skill just changes. So I have a child who, we have a whole business started for him, a micro enterprise, but she swears DTT is still the way he learns best and the quickest. You know, and but it's just that the skills now are all based on his job.
Okay.
So how to greet people, how to like take a credit card and swipe it,
Right.
all of that. And she swears up and down he's still learning, and he is, because he's learning how to do all the skills he needs. It's just that the targets have changed.
Okay.
So there are ABA people, and the thing is, you will have funding sources that say ABA wasn't meant to be lifelong, and I agree, it wasn't meant to be lifelong. It was meant to teach them what they need to know and to move on. But this is also an adult who is not fluent with vocal language. He uses a device to communicate mostly, and in reality, he will never be by himself in public.
Okay.
But
for this family, they're saying high functioning.
So if he's high functioning, it's all about teaching him independence then. Okay. And he shouldn't be sitting, if he's high functioning, it shouldn't look like the table learning anymore. It should really be the natural environment.
Okay.
Teaching him how to understand the cues in the environment, what will lead him to independence so he can learn on his own. And it is the goal. If you're high functioning, you should be learning all the cues that will teach you how to be independent in every way, whether it's with schooling or with work or just apartment living, how independent living skills. Then you should be fading off to see how independent they can be. It might go to where they can live, I have one that lives in a dorm on his own and everything, but we have someone go in and check once a week, or we'll just go do we realize when he walks across campus, he says hi to no one because he's so focused on getting where he's going.
Right.
And he knows how to say hi, but it doesn't help socially.
Right.
So when we do the 1 time a week drop-in, we realize, so there's no per se problem.
Right.
But we're there to see did you know that
bump it
you're
up a
ignoring
little
everybody?
Right.
But to teach them to be independent. So if they're high functioning, you're teaching them all the skills for them to recognize on their own that will help them have a more productive life in every way.
But I'm of the Martha Herbert school of thought that when the kids say I'm done, then that starts the timer quick ticking of you need to finish up.
Yeah.
Do you subscribe to that as well?
Not always, because sometimes it depends whether the reality is in check or not.
Okay.
Because we have kids who refuse to get any help from their ABA person, even though they still need help. And even though it's not even in an ABA setting, it's just like, hey, I'm going to teach you, the new term is adulting.
Right.
That typical people are using.
Right.
And we're like, no, we're going to teach you how to do a budget. And since we know that we can teach discreetly how to do a budget,
Right.
the parents will be like, can you come in and just do this for us? And the kid's refusing it completely.
Yeah.
But the parents have already tried to do it on their own naturally, and the kid still refuses. And even though we're telling them this will help you be independent, you'll never be independent with money if you don't know how to do this, they're completely refusing any help.
Well, what I'm thinking of is that I remember a moment when Jem looked at Sienna Greener Wooten, Dr. Wooten, and said to her, I don't want to do this anymore. And she, without missing a beat, said, that's great, Jem. Here are the 5 things that you need to be able to do. And the minute that you can do these 5 things, we're done. And he was like, really? That's all I have to do is those 5 things? Oh, if you just told me that, I would have done that weeks ago. And then he proceeded to do that, and they closed the book and went, you're done.
And that's what we do with the kids who are younger. Like when they're younger and they're saying, like, I don't want to be here, we're like, okay, if you can actually create a task list.
There you go.
Because sometimes the kids are far.
But older kids, that's not so cut and dried.
Yeah, elder kids, sometimes the reality is it's not a problem, but here are still your goals, but they still don't know how to meet those goals.
Got it.
And so it's those kids who are inflexible and who think help is just bad overall.
Right.
They don't realize, no, asking for help is being proactive to avoid certain situations. So with those kids, it's different. With the younger kids who have been in ABA from when they're 3 or 4, and they ask, like, we want to be done, and we set them goals.
Yeah.
We're like, here are the goals, and we help them keep track.
Yes.
Like, you want to be out of here. Okay, you achieve this one. There's still these 3. You're halfway done on here.
Yeah.
We just need the other half. And for them, the concreteness is very helpful. And for those kids, definitely. If you want to be done with this, it's fine. It's not a problem. We're going to get you here, and we're going to celebrate that you got here.
Okay. We're out of time. I don't know where the hour went, but I thank you so much. It's always a treat to have you here. We so appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time to do that.
You're very welcome.
We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. If you weren't here at the start of the show, let me just say we're going to have 2 moms that are on the show that have created a program that helps individuals who are on the spectrum that are young adults be able to get job experience and then get jobs in the music entertainment industry, which is really exciting. We are also going to have Dr. Vaughn Lauer on the show. He is the author of When the School Says No, How to Get the Yes, and Nancy and I have in the news for you as well. So we'll be right back after these messages.
Do you think Jack knows what's happening today?
Not a clue. We asked him where the baby was, and sometimes he points here, and sometimes he just points here and says belly button. So he's either getting a baby sister or a belly button. He's not sure.
Good. What about this one? It's a rooster. Yeah. Another one.
What puzzle? The hat puzzle.
Sure. Which one do you want?
Both.
Okay. Here you go.
Jessica gave Jack Riley a partial vocal prompt to get him to ask instead of demand the puzzle from her. Last week, she had to prompt him by saying,
Say, can I?
Hi, guitar.
Sure.
But now she only makes the sound to get him to ask. Eventually, he will need no prompting.
Case.
Case?
Yes, I want case. Case.
Yes, you can. Here you go. Should we dance and sing? Should we sing head, shoulders, knees, and toes? And you see, yeah?
Double five.
Okay, let's sing the song first, though.
Double.
Sing song first. Ready?
Double.
Head.
Double.
Head. Sing first, and then Dumbo.
Why?
Sing first.
Why?
Now that Jack Riley has language, he negotiates with Jessica instead of tantruming or crying like he would have.
Eyes and ears and
No.
and
No.
good. Head, shoulders, knees and toes. Whoa! You almost ate there. Yeah, you finished the song. Okay, come here. Whee! Whoa! It's like you're Superman, huh? It's like you're Superman. Come here. Jack Riley, come here. Come here. Thank you. Sit down. No. No. Jack Riley. No, look at my eyes. No, sit down chair. No, sit down chair. No, sit down chair. No. Jack Riley, you need to sit down chair. Thank you. Oh. Thanks. Good boy. High fives for good sitting. Thank you.
What happened?
That I was actually reading notes from other therapists that are on his team that he's been non-compliant when it comes to sitting in the chair. But right now it just seemed like he didn't want to do it because you asked him to do it, or I asked him to do it. And then I was prompting him to sit in the chair. But then once I just backed off, he sat on his own, like it's on his own terms, basically. But I didn't want him to get away with, if I asked him to do something, he has to do it. And that applies to when I ask him to do other things too, so that he doesn't learn that if I just ask him something and I don't follow through, then I don't have to listen to Jessica. I'll just listen to her whenever I feel like it.
Right.
And he's been really exercising just because he can vocalize what he wants now. He wants it every time he asks for something, and then if you don't give it to him, then that's what happens. I do want him to learn that just because he asks nicely doesn't mean he'll get everything every time.
Are you excited? You excited?
He's sleeping.
Are you sleeping?
So what time are you going to leave, Mike?
We have OT at 11.
Oh, you still have OT today?
Yeah.
Oh, isn't it that I get close?
Yeah, well, that's the life of that's our life now.
Let's go back out.
I'm gonna go, I gotta go take a shower because we're gonna have a baby. See you later.
Later.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod. And
Hi.
we love that picture of us because it was taken last year at last year's Denim and Diamonds.
and Stars.
Right before I started eating insanely. So I like that one.
We had on matching blue.
We did. We always have this Vulcan mind
know,
meld.
we
Not
do.
so much today, but where we'll be in the same color palette.
Right.
And we're not going to give away anything. But you were just saying that yesterday you decided on your dress for this year's Denim and Diamonds.
Yes.
Nancy's a Barbie. And so she's like dressing a Barbie, and you get the little Barbie shoes and put them on her feet, and it's like I would love to dress you. I would find that really exciting to dress you, but I cannot wear the little shoes or the big shoes. I can't do any of that. I'm in my $5 Walmart sneakers right now.
It's okay.
But so the dressing up thing, I love to dress up anybody but me.
Spectacular, by the
I don't
way,
want to
and
dress
that-
up myself, but I'm happy.
Yeah, I
I
love
should
that
have had
picture of you.
girls because I love to
You
dress
do?
up other people.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm a great person to take to the store.
To go shopping with?
Go shopping with, because I find things that people would never wear that they go, oh my gosh, this is fabulous
Yeah.
on me. I just can't dress myself.
Right.
That's all.
Okay.
It's like paper dolls for me. But yes, and you're like a Barbie. You can put anything on this woman and she looks fabulous.
Well, thank you for that compliment. I love
It's
that
so
picture.
true though, and you always look very styling on the red carpet.
It's always a fun thing to get ready for,
Well, if you like that kind of thing, it
Yeah.
would drive me buggy.
Yeah, it's fun. That one day a year that I get
Yeah.
to play that role of feeling like I'm going to the Academy Awards of Autism or something.
We are so in tune with each other, but we are so different people.
I know.
And I always love that about us because we are so different people,
It's
because
interesting.
that's your idea of a great day, is like going and having people fuss with your hair and your makeup. And that is my idea of the worst day on the planet. Right? I mean, like, that
Yeah.
just makes me want to break out into hives thinking about it.
Well, it is a lot of work, and I don't know how some celebrities do it, having to look good all the time. I wouldn't be crazy about that.
No, not
Anyway,
even a
sorry
little
about the hoarseness of my voice today. I don't know where that's coming from.
Lots of wind and allergy
yeah.
things here. I'm hoping
So we have some stuff in the news.
Yes.
Let's start with, this is a rather
Let's start
depressing
with the
story.
yeah, right?
That young people with severe autism languish weeks or longer in the hospital, which is no surprise. As a matter of fact, I know of a Grant family we have whose child has been in the hospital for close to a year.
Yeah.
Because there's no placements, residential placements for him.
And the statistics on this are really frightening. There's an article that was in the Washington Post the other day about this, about the numbers of kids and how much it's increased, so that now it's more than doubled. The statistics they have are from 2014, and we can only assume that it's gotten worse since then. The number of kids that end up hospitalized, we know that more of our kids are hospitalized than any other. More of them go to the emergency room, and when they do get hospitalized, they stay significantly longer.
Yes.
And this is really eye-opening. And a lot of times it starts with what we could look at and go, this is behavioral.
It's behavioral.
That the kid
there's
has
a
got
tantrum at home where that maybe escalates out of control.
and the kid
parent
is
can't
yelling
handle it.
and violent, and the parent has, like, what do I do?
Right.
So they call 911, and the police don't know what to do.
And the police tether the child and put them in the hospital.
And then in the
oftentimes
hospital,
they're tethered there.
Yes, they're shackled. And there's one case in this article that talks about that it was so severe that they were putting a tray through a
for the
slot
food.
in the door for the individual to eat,
Right.
and that he was there for months on
Right,
end. And the
right.
families were saying, when is there? Because they want them to be moved to someplace else. They can't
Right.
just go home. It's danger to themselves and to the family. But there are so few places where you can send an adult to get the kind of help that they need to
Right.
do. We really need to look at this as
We
a
do. We
society.
have to.
And people will write into us here on the show and say that they're in this space, and we honestly don't know what to tell them to do,
No.
because the waiting list for the kinds of places that have that kind of
Level of
behavioral
care.
support,
Right.
they are so few and far between, and the waiting lists
Right.
are long.
Right. So,
So-
this is a very, very disturbing trend, and I don't know what the answer is, because a lot of developmental and mental health services have been cut. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really disconcerting. And it could happen to any of us.
Of course
is
it
the
could.
thing. And we've seen this on many occasions where something happens,
Yeah.
and you reach out hoping that somebody's going to be able to help you. So we'll keep on it. We'll try to figure out what the solution is, but things have got to change.
another study, groundbreaking study, it says on autism and gender, reveals the disorder is most common in boys who have an older autistic sister.
Yes.
That it's more common to have a boy after the birth of a sister with autism.
And this is the largest study of its kind. They analyzed health records for more than 1.5 million American children, and they actually looked at 3.1 million children, looking at insurance records and seeing how many people were diagnosed with autism and what was the configuration. So, of course, they found that more boys have autism than girls, and I wrote a big duh in purple on my paper.
Right.
Duh.
The duh heard around the world.
But okay, here's what they found: that for every 100 boys with an older sibling with autism, 17 of them have an autism or related disorder. And that same statistic, so it ended up being that male children with an older male sibling, it was a 13% risk. So 17% if you have a girl who's on the spectrum and you have a boy, 17% likely to have a boy who's on the
with
spectrum.
autism.
If you have a boy who's on the spectrum and you have another boy, it's a 13% risk that you'll have the second child on the autism spectrum. And the lowest risk was if you had a boy and then that was on the spectrum, and then you have a daughter. In that case, you have a 4% risk of having a child who's on the spectrum. So it's significantly more if you've had a girl but it's 17%.
Yes.
And that's high, and we don't want to poo-poo that. But we also, for those of you who've had a girl and on the
Right.
spectrum and are considering having another child, keep in mind that you're 5 times more likely to have a child that's not on the spectrum than on the spectrum.
Right.
And we have had people on this show talking about the P2I study, Dr. David Berger and David Humphreys. If you've already had one child on the autism spectrum, there are protocols that have been scientifically shown to reduce your risk of having a second child that's on the spectrum. And for those of you who have siblings that are on the spectrum and want to reduce your risk, they're finding this to be a very effective thing. And what it is about getting healthy, getting your body healthy and
Right.
ready to be pregnant, and having an extremely healthy pregnancy.
Right, and having an extremely clean environment.
An extremely clean environment, much more than you're going to find any other place. And not only have they found that it reduces the risk of having a child who's on the autism spectrum, it reduces the child. First of all, it reduces your risks of having a miscarriage. It reduces the risk of a childhood cancer.
Right.
The risk of reduces the risk of childhood diabetes.
Yes.
I mean, these are some good reasons to make sure that you have the healthiest pregnancy you can possibly have. If
Right.
you're interested in more information on that, you can look at Google P2I and Google Dr. David Berger P2I, because he's the one who's doing the studies and doing the protocol. It's pretty amazing.
And then there's the Gary Newman story, which you had to acquaint me with who Gary Newman is.
Well, if you're not into like 80s alternative punk rock kind of thing, it may not be a name that brings images up for you. But for those of us who were, Gary Newman was always a guy who wore a lot of makeup. He did that song In Cars.
In Cars.
Yes.
Do, 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 do.
I'm not a singer, but In Cars. And he would do that thing with his head, and he would have all the eyeliner on.
Right.
So that's Gary Newman.
Okay.
And he was a pretty out there, on the edge performer in the 80s. And he recently came forward and said that he believes that he is on the autism spectrum. He then clarified a little bit and said when he was 15, he had a lot of social issues and problems with things, went to see a child psychiatrist who said, you probably have Asperger's, but they didn't formally diagnose him. And then as he learned more as an adult and saw some of the things in his life that just didn't work the way they did in other people's lives, he's like, I think
I'm an Asperger's
I think
person.
that's who I am. And so this woman,
on social media,
on Twitter, because everybody thinks that they're entitled to an opinion now, but and I guess everybody is, excuse me, but you put an opinion out there, people are going to have an opinion about your opinion.
Right.
And boy, did the autism community have an opinion.
Yeah,
the first tweet that she did said there is absolutely nothing about Gary Newman and his stupid face paint that is autistic. And she said it's an insult to the real sufferers of this disorder. Oh my gosh, did she open a can of worms? Because people were like, who are you saying suffers? Oh, and and what does his face paint have to do with being autistic? And educate yourself. And then she wrote more and said, that she said it was Bullock, so she must be British.
Yeah, is he British?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And people just, to the point where
Jumped all
apparently
over.
She's left Twitter. I
Okay.
said they hopped on and pecked her to death.
Yeah, they did.
Because
Be careful with social media.
She touched a nerve, and people were like, look, it's a spectrum. Why? And he then kind of defended himself and said, here are the symptoms.
Yes.
Like, what? Is this really how we want to spend our time?
Right.
If somebody says that they think that they qualify and
Respect
they've
that.
been to a doctor who
respect
says,
that.
why you got to chime in? I don't know. But
Okay.
I think she's done chiming in.
I think she's
she gave
she's
up.
been attacked enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Autism is everywhere in the media these days. I mean, let's
isn't it?
face it. We've
Yes.
got Atypical, which has come out. We've got.
In fact, we're going to be doing an interview with them, and next week on the show with the creator of Atypical.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It is fantastic, and we're really excited. Robia Rashid, and she's an amazing young woman. She was one of the executive producers on The Goldbergs.
Okay.
And has been on other shows as well, but this was her brainchild. This was something that she wrote, and she's going to be on the show. It's going to be a week from tomorrow.
And then The Good Doctor premiered the other night.
Yes, I have so many good things to say about that,
Yes,
too.
I thought it was really well done. I didn't stay to the very end.
Well, I got to go to a special screening on Saturday, and oh my gosh, with an autism audience.
Right.
And it was, I would say people of all ages and abilities were there. It was fascinating to see how everybody reacted as the show, because there was some really hardcore stuff in it.
Yeah.
And some stuff that was upsetting. I was concerned about a couple of little kids that were in the room that
there were some medical procedures that are done that are
pretty... first of all, I love a good story, and I thought it was a good story.
Yes.
And second of all, I love Richard Schiff, and I'm just not even going to pretend that isn't a part of it for me. But Richard Schiff, who was on The West Wing and has just been a character actor on so many things, and he said he was done with television, but he came back for this script because of the way it was written, and you can hear it in the words.
Yeah, the passion he has as an advocate for Dr. Sean.
Don't we want him to go everywhere with our kids and be like, here, Richard Schiff has something that he wants to say.
Yes.
To all of you who aren't paying attention.
Right.
For those of you who haven't seen it, I will tell you that there is one moment where a really pain in the butt doctor says something about, well, we really don't want this here, and I just don't think he can handle this, and at one point there's a discussion about high functioning, and he makes a derogatory comment about high functioning, and Richard Schiff just totally turns it back on him and says, well, if that were true, then you wouldn't be in your job.
Exactly.
And people were cheering in the audience. And talk about touching a nerve. People were like, yeah! So I love The Good Doctor, and I can't wait to see what's coming in future episodes.
It's a great show. And there's a BBC TV new show called Pablo that is featuring an all autistic cast. This one is actually having actors, everybody on it has autism.
Isn't that wonderful?
Which is great. And it'll air on CBeebies, a BBC program for children, and Irish broadcaster RTE Jr. And it surrounds a boy named Pablo, who's a 5-year-old on the autism spectrum, who creates imaginary animal friends that come to life through magic crayons. His friends help him with everyday situations that make him anxious, such as going to the supermarket. And he's played by a 10-year-old boy, Jake Williamson, on the spectrum. So we'll be looking for more on that.
Very excited. And tomorrow on the show, we're having Sarah Weeks join us. She is the author of the young adult best-selling New York Times, LA Times bestseller, So Be It. And it has been made into a movie.
Right.
And that is debuting next week. So she's going to be with us on the show tomorrow. There's some controversy surrounding it because there are a couple of characters in the movie that have autism. And there's a character in the movie that has agoraphobia.
Okay.
And the movie got a mature rating. It did not get a PG-13. It got a mature rating. And when asked why, they were told it's because of the themes. Now, I've seen the movie, and I'm in shock with the rest of the people.
So the themes of disability?
And death. And there is... one of the things, I don't want to give away mysteries, but there's a mom who has autism and is largely nonverbal, and she's had a baby.
Right.
And we don't know how she's had that baby, and there's some mystery surrounding that.
Yeah.
But it's dealt with really maturely, and I do not, for the life of me, cannot figure out why this got a mature rating. And the disability community is saying, is it just because they're dealing with disabilities? Because that is not a reason to keep our young adults from watching this movie. So Sarah Weeks is going to be with us tomorrow so that we can try to decode how in the heck this happened, because it is off the rails wrong.
Okay.
But ask me how I really feel.
All right. So
we've got two guests.
Well, yes, we do. We have some interesting guests today. First,
Cindy
we're gonna start
Fecteau.
with, yes, we're going to
And-
start with two women who have been involved in a groundbreaking program called Why I See, Yes I Can.
Yes.
Unity Through Music and Education program. So we're going to be on with them.
Cindy Fecteau and Kirsten Fitzpatrick.
Yeah,
And then a
so-
little bit later, Dr. Von Lauer.
When the school says no, how to get the yes, and his approach towards IEPs, which is very interesting. He has a collaborative approach that
6 questions.
6 questions that we're going to go through and find out exactly what he says we need
Yes,
to
and
know.
he's going to tell us how we tie
Okay.
the people, the administrators, down to the chairs to get them
Right.
to answer the 6 questions.
Right.
I can't wait.
Okay.
But first, yes, I can. Unity through music.
Yes.
After these messages, stick
Okay.
with us.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
Provided for, we are so provided for. We are so provided for. We are so provided for.
Yes, I can.
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 Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
I will learn to be peaceful, but I keep my knife at my side. I will pray for compassion. Oh, oh, oh. But if war comes to my door, you know I will be blasting. Warrior mentality, my responsibility, bringing it to my people now. Feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah. Feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah.
Get this party started. Now down 20
feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah. Feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah. I am an Indian, I've been betraying. So my capability, I could get that preservation. Gonna be my situation. My situation, I come from a long line of people in displacement. Why I'm an Indian, I'm on a mission. This time definitely call for certain kinds of patience. I'm changing, it's amazing. Every day is a new day for this Indian in training. Why I'm a hustler, got all kinds of customers. People need their medicine, this music promotes consciousness. Past, present, future tense, all the kidding elements. Everything you do in life is definitely relevant. Warrior people, what about your people? Warrior people, what about your people? Warrior people, what about your people? Making the best of peace with the strength of an ego. Warrior people, warrior people. Warrior people, warrior people. Warrior people, what about your people? Making the best of peace, yes, ambitiousness is lethal. I will learn to be peaceful, but I keep my knife at my side. I will pray for compassion. Oh, oh, oh. But if war comes to my door, you know I will be blessing. Warrior mentality, my responsibility, bringing it to my people now. Feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah. Feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah, yeah. Oh, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah. Feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah, yeah. I have two mothers, stupid mothers. One of them is brown, one of them is white. One of them taught me to be peaceful, one of them taught me how to fight. Now I put the two together and I know wrong from right straight. I have two fathers, two beautiful fathers. One of them is brown, one of them is white. One of them taught me how to sing, one of them taught me how to write. Now I put the two together and I know wrong from right straight. I am a white man, I rape my children. I am a black man, I killed an African. I am a woman, I am a Muslim. I was raised Christian, now I am forgiven. Saved by native wisdom, I follow my traditions. I teach my children new to trust in adolescence. Are you listening? 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 I teach my children new to trust in adolescence. I will learn to be peaceful, but I keep my knife at my side. I will pray for compassion. Oh, oh, oh. But if war comes to my door, you know I will be blessing. Warrior mentality, my responsibility, bringing it to my people now. All of you feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, feeding me, yeah.
Yes, we did. Boom.
I had a dream last night. A child came in smiling, looked me square in the eyes, with a glow on his face. He took me by the hand and led me to the window. He said, look outside. The whole world has changed. Then I woke up alone in the darkness, ran to the window, nothing but rain. I tried to close my eyes and bring back the feeling. Couldn't for the life of me make it come back again. Maybe tomorrow things will be better. Maybe tomorrow somebody will open all the doors. Maybe tomorrow the sun will start shining. Tomorrow's the day we've all been waiting for. Wish I could call you up on the telephone, just to let you know what's going on here at home. Had some good days, had some bad ones too. One thing for certain, we're both missing you. Maybe tomorrow things will be better. Maybe tomorrow somebody will open all the doors. Maybe tomorrow the sun will start shining. Tomorrow's the day we've all been waiting for. I know you God knows we're in a battle zone. Well, I'm fighting the war back here, and I'm fighting it all alone. The only reason I'm not losing my mind is that maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow things will be better. Maybe tomorrow somebody will open all the doors. Maybe tomorrow the sun will be shining. Tomorrow's the day we've all been waiting for.
And we are back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and we're now joined by two remarkable women who are advocates, among other things, and activists, and they've got a lot going on in the areas of autism. And they also self-identify as being on the autism spectrum themselves. Kirsten Fitzpatrick and Cindy Factow. And I might want to say, Cindy, that video we just saw, your son was featured in at the beginning of it because you were a military family.
Yes, that was the very beginning of our kind of journey into the world of autism and all of the different layers and aspects of the community.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll also ask Kirsten the same question.
My background started off as a parent. I had been diagnosed as a child with childhood schizophrenia, so that was what I thought I had. And it wasn't until my youngest was diagnosed that I immediately became involved in the community. We were stationed at Camp Pendleton.
Your husband was a Marine.
He was a Marine, yes. And so I immediately got involved with as many of the groups as I could, the EFMP, the Exceptional Family Member Program, which is available to family dependents that have different needs. And kind of from there, got more involved in the community, joined the board of directors of the Autism Society San Diego, spent 7 years on the board, one of those years as president, and then I founded the San Diego chapter of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. So I have 2 autistic children, ages 10 and 20, and my 20-year-old is currently in college studying to become a surgical technician.
That's amazing. Okay, and Kirsten, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I used to be in special education, so I taught for a while, and then also in counseling. So I have my PPS credential. And then from there, I'm a social worker now, so I work directly with families in our community. But I have pretty extensive background in the private sector and also the public sector over the last 20 years. But yeah, so
Okay.
I'm in the trenches
So
every day.
you both come with a wealth of experience, and let's talk about the program that you're here to talk with us about today.
Well, can I just, because I don't know that we fully got, because we talked about it before, you
Okay.
both have children who are on the spectrum,
Mhm.
and you both have been diagnosed as being on the spectrum
Yes,
yourselves.
officially diagnosed,
So,
yeah.
yes, officially diagnosed. So I just wanted to get that so that our audience knows, because that's a really unique and wonderful perspective to be bringing this project from. So now, I'm sorry, now let's hear what the project is.
Yeah, let's hear what the project is.
Do you want to start?
Well, originally it started as just solely a social inclusion program. So this was it's a curriculum that was written over 20 years ago called Yes, I Can. I'm sure you guys have heard of it.
Mhm.
So it was brought to our school district. Brad, who's our executive director, Brett Lieberman, he actually he headed the program there, and he's a special education teacher. And he found over the years that there was a missing element there as far as working primarily with high school kids, that they were really unprepared coming out as far as going into the adult world and employment and that sort of thing. So the social part of it was fine, but it wasn't enough. So he started what's called a summer meltdown, but it's an event that he would have the students work on throughout the year, and they do everything from booking talent to lighting, sound. They were getting that real life experience.
In fact, we just showed a video about it before
Yeah.
you guys came in, the summer meltdown. Very exciting.
Yeah, so in that video, the kids in the orange shirts are actually the students. So you can see that they're actively
Working side by side with industry professionals, hands-on, kind of that. I personally learn better that way myself as an autistic individual, and I think many of us do. So
yeah, definitely.
It's a good.
Here, we've got some pictures up right now.
Yeah.
From the event.
And we're huge fans of Logan Shepard. He's been very involved in the show, and his band has played before at Meltdown, and so we have mentioned Meltdown before because we're huge Logan Shepard fans.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So what ended up happening was Brett came to me and he said, I'd really like to make this more of a social vocational program, not just a social inclusion program.
Right.
So we sat down and we decided the only way to do that was to actually leave the district and go out on our own. So that's what we're doing now. So we're in between. Our classes actually don't start until January, the first quarter of January.
Okay.
So we have a waiting list. We already have families that are calling in and want to get on the waiting list. So we're in the process of obtaining or getting vendorization with DOR Regional Center. That's where our funding's going to come from. It's because it's something we don't want our families to have paid for,
Yes.
obviously.
And you have a need for sponsors and
yes,
corporate sponsors
we're looking
and grants
for
and
corporate sponsors, grants, endowments. We have some passive fundraising opportunities that we're working on getting started to where eventually people can donate their cars. But pretty much corporate sponsorships are a really big deal, especially when it comes to festivals. Putting on a festival of this magnitude, especially because it grows exponentially every year.
Yes.
So in order to keep it growing, we need to keep...
So you're actively seeking that and you're actively recruiting board members too?
Yes.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong though, but this program is to help individuals who are in those transitioning years to be able to have all the skills that they need to have jobs, paid jobs in the music entertainment
and
industry.
not just paid jobs, but equally paid jobs, because you hear all of these stories of sheltered workshops and people getting paid 11 cents an hour to fold towels in a back room, and really, that's kind of, we all talk about it as a executive group, and we say, we don't want our students to graduate and have that. We want them to have real marketable skills that they can then take out into the community and work with some of our partners. Another thing that we're doing is we're partnering with companies and organizations that will take in our graduate students as interns, and working on a paid internship program that will hopefully eventually lead to employment within the field.
But specifically the music entertainment industry. This is what you're not trying to cover all vocational things.
No.
For kids who have a passion for this world, you're creating a path for them. Because how often, listen, any kid on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, comes to their parent and says, oh, I want a career in the music industry. And the parent goes, okay, but you got to have a job, right? Yes. And for our kids who are really into this, I can just hear the parents going, oh, thank goodness somebody else has created something where they're going to take them from point A to point C and you're going to get a job.
Well, and a lot of these skills can also be translated to related fields, theater, film, TV. In fact, we just attended an event with someone who does music for film and TV. So there's a lot of that overlap that goes. You learn sound and lighting and stuff like that, and you can then push that into different industries if you need to. So it's.
And you partnered with the Grammy Foundation Museum?
Yeah, just recently, they have several programs themselves that are actually very similar to what we're doing. So we're collaborating together to where our students, I don't want to jump around as far as how it's structured, our program, but our students once a week are going to go out to the Grammy Foundation's programs. So they actually go on site and we collaborate in that way. So if they have events or the workshops that they put on, that's actually become part of our program. So we're joining forces in that sense. But our program's pretty comprehensive because we have an assessment in the beginning that we do. So we look at the students, if they have an IEP, we look at that. If they have an IPE, which is through DOR, Department of Rehabilitation, we look at that as well. If they have an IPP with Regional Center, we look at that.
You can do all the letters.
Yes,
all the acronyms.
IPP. Yeah. So we take as much information. We actually go out and we observe. If they're still in school, we'll actually observe them in the classroom, that sort of thing. We take input from parents. That's crucial. So we take all this information. Of course, the student's involved in every aspect of it because we're very big on self-determination and being involved in your life. And so that's an important factor. And based on that, on that data that we collect, we put together what's called an individual habilitation service plan.
Right.
So then we have outcomes associated to that. So we find whatever deficits or things that the student may be struggling with, we build outcomes based on that. So throughout the program, we have our set curriculum, but we also are mindful of those goals and whatever that student's struggling in. We work with those things throughout the program. We do quarterly assessments. So that's just for us to see if the student's on track to the goals.
Okay.
And then we also do a semi-annual, pretty large assessment. And that's, we sit down together and we go, we on track?
Yes.
What do we need to do? Down to maybe the student thought initially lighting was his or her thing, but now I want to do sound. So we can actually kind of gear them towards whatever direction they want to go, and then we have mentors that help them there.
And unfortunately, we live in an age, when I was in high school, my go-to social skills was show choir. I was in competitive show choir. That saved my life because I had no friends. Back then, of course, they didn't call it autism, but now we know. But this became, a built-in group of friends that had similar interests to me. So having that thing to do, that commonality, and building upon something I was already good at and had strength in, was so important, not only to my future, but also to my self-esteem at the time.
Absolutely. What you guys are doing is important, and unfortunately we're out of time, but
Tell
I
us
want
how to
people
get in
to
touch.
how do they get
we
more
need to know how they
information?
get in touch with
So
you.
ycunity.org. So
Okay.
if you want to learn anything about our program, how to enroll, there's a contact us page. If you want to donate, you want to be a sponsor.
If you want to sign up for our board of directors, our application is right there online.
So
Fabulous.
ycunity.org.
Okay. Spectacular. And we
Great
look forward to
program.
hearing more as you guys get everything up and going
Yeah.
and seeing great things come from you guys. Thank you
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to be back with Dr.
Von
Von Lauer,
of
author of
When the School Says No, How to Get the Yes.
IEPs. Okay, stick with us.
Are those your eyes? Is that your smile? I've been looking at you forever, yet I never saw you before. Are these your hands?
As a celebrity, whatever that means, you want to do what you can to get back. The way I've always looked at it, if I'm available, I'm going to be there. And when you get there and you see what folks are doing and the lives that they're touching, how can you not want to continue to be a part of it?
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes.
What can we all do to make a difference? Not only with trying to find a cure, but to help the children and the families that may not have the resources for these kids.
When you're looking back at me, now I understand what.
And none of us are doing enough, but I think that we're doing as much as we possibly can. Because we all live in a society, and the more we can all do to help society, the more it helps all of us.
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes. And for the first time, I'm seeing who you are. I can't believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. Now I understand what love is. Love is. For the first time.
A lot of adults don't really believe kids. They'll think, kids are kids, what are they talking about? But when a child stands up for what they believe in, it's so strong and powerful. I first got involved with autism advocacy 4 years ago when my friend was diagnosed. When I found out about my friend's diagnosis, I didn't really understand what it meant. matter to me or change our friendship. I didn't look at her any differently. We still had so much fun together. Now I know that she experiences life a little differently than me, and that's okay. Knowing what she goes through has helped me to understand and be more caring towards other people in similar situations. I got involved with ACT Today because I wanted to do whatever I could to help. They provide options like behavioral therapy, medical care, social skills programs, assistance to military families, and much more. Being there for my friend was my #1 priority. I've been volunteering and spreading the word about the cause via my social media platform because raising awareness is a crucial first step. There needs to be more kids and teens involved to make sure that our voices are heard just as loudly as the adults. You may be small like me, but your acts of kindness are not.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, all right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay? And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape.
Or V.
Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Then it's you.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet. But also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor. You still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes. But rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay? So, yep. You're gonna do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Or are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good.
Being part of this community is really important to a mom with a son like Jackson, because it really does take a village, and you need so much support, you know, to help bring out all of the amazing qualities and skills and talents that our children have. So I'm just very grateful to everybody who was a part of this.
Ways we haven't discovered in the rest of society to bring them out. So when you see a program like this and you see the kids dancing, having fun, and making up jokes, making up the story. I was here when they did that. That was so amazing to watch because they were all focused, they were all present, they were all laughing, they were all getting into the creation of this story. And that to me sort of broke the barrier to say, no, first we're dealing with people and then we're dealing with the challenges.
And welcome back. And now we are joined by Dr. Vaughn K. Lauer. Dr. Lauer has over 30 years of experience of pre-K through post-secondary education as a teacher, professor, and building district and state administrator. And he's also held various private directorships. And we're here to really focus on his book, which is called When the School Says No, How to Get a Yes. How to get the yes, right?
That's what we all want, right?
In the IEP process. Welcome, Dr. Lauer.
Well, thank you both very much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Tell us about the process that you describe in this book, which is you refer to as the structured collaborative IEP process.
I never found anywhere where collaboration was defined. Anytime I would read texts on it or watch videos or get trainings, it was always on the side of mediation. And I was talking with my doctor, and I didn't realize that she had a child with autism. And in 30 seconds, she said, "We need to write a book. This is the title. You do it." And I said, okay. The timing is good because I've just created in my head a number of questions to ask at an IEP meeting that would lead to collaboration. And a parent could lead that, a teacher could, an administrator, it didn't matter. In fact, it's so small that it's 6 questions that I can put on the back of my card. And that's the basis of the book. And really, really fast, I will do this. If you think of the GPS system, and this is how the book is laid out. It is 13 stories submitted by parents, and I spent a lot of time interviewing them. Some of them are just really close friends now, and that was a wonderful experience, and sad too, but there were happy moments. And what I developed was these 6 questions I would look at and evaluate their stories against these 6 questions. And it goes like this. If you start a GPS system brand new in your car and you want to go someplace, you can sit there and talk to your blue in the face, telling the system, I want to go to grandma's house. It's not going to get you there. It can't get you there because it doesn't know where it is. And so the first question always in an IEP meeting is, where are we? And further defining that, it's, what do I know? What do I know about my child? And the second is, what don't I know? If I don't know where I am, I can't know where I'm going. And that's how the book starts. And every step that we take, answering each of the questions, is based on the information agreed to by the team in the previous question. So if we can first define where the child is, and that's really key, is understanding test data, which is another topic we can go into at depth. The next question I ask is, where do we want to go? It's more than want to go, it's where do we need to go, based on, you guessed it, the first question, what do we know about the child? And this is really goal setting. And so we're writing goals based on what we know. Too many meetings I've sat in, and I said to you earlier, I've literally sat in thousands, at least 2,000 IEP meetings, and I've sat there going, we're talking about placement before we even talk about the child's needs. So the first question, again, is where are the child's needs? And I tell the GPS system, here's where we are. I live at 13205, whatever it is, and the GPS system says, great. But then I want to go someplace. It's not going to help me until I tell the system where I want to go. Now I've got 2 pieces of information, and the GPS system says, great. I will take you there. By the way, would you like to know how to get there? And we do that with our IEP. We first say, what are our needs? What are our goals? The next is, how am I going to get there? In other words, what services do I need in order to achieve the goals that were based on the student's needs? 1, 2, 3. What's unique about this system is everybody at that table participates. I don't care if it's a special education director or a teacher with 50 years of experience, or the top-of-the-line expert of special education, or a parent who's never been at an IEP meeting before, or a PE teacher, or an adaptive PE teacher. Every person there is going to be asked the same question: what do you know? Where do we need to go? And how are we going to get there? By doing that, we're building group, not consensus, but group agreement. Totally different from other approaches to holding IEP meetings. So if I'm moving along and the team is saying, yep, we agree, these are the needs, these are the goals, these are the services, this is how we're going to measure how we're getting there, and that's what a GPS system will do. It'll tell you, turn left, turn right. And it will even say, you're within 20 miles or 20 minutes of where you're going. Our IEPs are developed in that same thought process of, I've got goals, I've got the services, and periodically I'm going to be given feedback on the progress I'm making, just like a GPS system. So we write the IEP so those goals are stated in behavioral measurable terms. I know I'm doing this really, really fast. And the reports that come to the parents are in measurable and understandable structured too, not making progress. That's not how we wrote a goal. We didn't write a goal to say, child will make progress. We were very specific on what was to accomplish. The GPS system, as it approaches the destination, will tell you, here it is on the left, and that's the last part of the IEP. We want to know when we've gotten there, and what that means is, have we achieved what we set out in the IEP, in the goal statements? We would know because we're getting periodic reports that are very understandable, and so when we get to the end, which is the last question, where do we go from here, this is what we call an annual review. And by the time we had that annual review, everybody at that table knows where we were, the kind of progress that has been carried out. We've got measurable data. We know where the child is. In essence, we have come full circle, and we're answering the first question of, what do we know? What don't we know? And we start writing the IEP again. Now, what's really nifty about this whole system is when, and I've seen it happen, we agree on the needs, we agree on the goals, and we get to the services, and somebody balks and says, no, I don't think that service is appropriate. The key to this is, well, we agreed that these were needs, right? Yeah, we did. We agreed that this is what we want to accomplish at the end of the year. Yes, we did. And we're saying, whoever that is, that this service is going to address this need, but you're saying you don't think that's appropriate. Well, maybe it is. And there are situations where the school system's going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. Well, and I hate to talk like this, but if you have to reach out to an advocate or an attorney, they're going to love you because they're going to say, well, did you agree on the needs? Oh, yeah, we agreed. Did you agree on the goals? Oh, yeah, we agreed on the goals. Here we are. And you didn't agree on the service that matches the goal? No, we didn't.
Well,
okay, great.
What's great about the book, Dr. Lauer, is that you give a lot of case studies of families that have been through this process. So
you're going to find your story somewhere in this book and get some real. I love your key points. One of my favorite. You say if the school says no, parents must remain vigilant and consistent with the issues of concern. If the concern is important, you need to continue making it an issue, not by whining or complaining, but through the use of the structured collaborative IEP process. That if you give steps that you just went through, and then you have to keep following them. And when it does go awry, you want to scream and yell and throw a tantrum, but you can't, and you have to stay on point. So,
yes, and you can if you've laid it out with all these steps of agreement. That makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Tell us how people can get the book.
It's on Amazon, and so it's very easy to find. If you go into Amazon and you Vaughn K. Lauer, not that other guy that's on TV, or type in when the school says no, it'll come right up. It's readily available at all kinds of prices at this point.
There you go. A real different approach to IEPs. Dr. Lauer, we are so sorry that we don't have more time for you today, but we'll have to have you back on another time.
I'd love to. Thanks so much, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We're past our time, so I just want to say quickly to folks that tomorrow on the show I mentioned before, Sarah Weeks is going to be on, the author of So Be It, the young adult novel that's now a movie with a great cast. Oh my gosh. So she's going to be on the show. We also have a gentleman with a new product that's called Goalie, a way to keep ourselves and our kids on track towards goals. It's a little clock that has, it's a different kind of reminder. And of course, we're going to have Bonnie Yates with us and our mindfulness moment and autism in the classroom. So, and plus which we've got a doctor who's going to be on talking about cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety. I don't know how I could have left that out.
Okay.
So she's going to be, it's a packed show. So that's all happening tomorrow. And and already for next week, it's insanity that we've got great guests. So it's fabulous. But until tomorrow, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Goodbye.
Bye-bye for now.